Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the webinar, An Introduction to Xenon Connect. My name is Gareth Salmon. I'm a chartered accountant. I'm also founder of Xenon Connect. And the webinar will take about probably half an hour to 45 minutes. If you've got any questions along the way, please do pop them in the chat or the Q&A box there, and we'll get to them when we can. So as a bit of an overview of this webinar, we'll have a look at what Xenon Connect actually does. We'll have a look at who can get best use out of Xenon Connect. Then the main session will be the walkthrough of the software itself. And then we'll take a look at pricing for partners and also our no risk offer at the moment. But what I want to do first, if I just pop some links in the chat here. Okay. So we've got a Facebook community, and that's where other accountants and bookkeepers chat with us about what they want to see coming up and added to Xenon Connect. It's a really good place to get an idea of how other people use Xenon Connect as well. Then I've got my LinkedIn page, so please do connect with me on LinkedIn. If you want to book a one-on-one meeting with me at any point, do use that link there, and we can have a chat about how you use Xenon Connect yourself. And then the final link, if you've not already set up your free partner account with Xenon, then you've got the option to there with that link straight to the form to create one. You'll be able to add one organization free for life, and we'll come on to the offer and the pricing at the end as well. Anyway, but let's jump straight in. So what does Xenon Connect do? Well, Xenon Connect is cloud-based Xero, Quickbooks Online and FreeAgent add-on, which saves accountants and bookkeepers time by automatically detecting errors and issues in bookkeeping data and generating a prioritized checklist to address them quickly, systematically, and consistently. Now, I've been in practice since 2003 up until last year, and have spent many years sifting through nominal ledgers, so repairs, other expenses, sundry, age of debtors, age of creditors, looking for those issues that we need to sort of reconcile or fix. And when we spot an issue, it's really clear what needs to be done with it. But sometimes, due to the amount of data that's involved and the amount going on and the amount of time we have to do these jobs, it can really cause a problem, can't it? And it can really slow us down. So why I started to create Xenon Connect 3 years ago was to speed up the process for myself and my team in finding these various range of issues, speeding up that process, and then having a process whereby you can easily fix those issues quickly. So you'll see throughout Xenon Connect, you can push changes back to the ledger. So you could, for example, push changes back to Xero, QuickBooks, or FreeAgent with one click from Xenon, where you spot there needs to be an adjustment. And we'll come on to what it looks like shortly. Now, broadly, we've got 4 main categories of bookkeeping error checks, and they fall within the outstanding or old items, duplicate items, incorrectly coded items, and what we call utility checks, which don't necessarily affect the ledger directly, but if they're in order, those issues, then it will speed up the process of bookkeeping for the team. Now, we'll go through quite a few of these shortly when we look at the software as well, so I'm not going to tell you what they all are now, but just to get an idea of the main broad categories of data check we have. So in terms of who should use Xenon Connect, well, as we go through the software and I show you the demo, have a think about how bookkeeping and account staff, the people on the ground, either doing the bookkeeping work or that initial review of the bookkeeping, can really cut down the amount of time it takes them to process the bookkeeping or review it. And it gives them that extra set of eyes, which means there'll be less errors and less review points for client managers when it takes a step up as well. It gamifies the bookkeeping process. So dare I say, it makes that bookkeeping process a little bit more interesting because you've got this health score, which your team members can work towards. And it's a tangible health score, that metric that they can target to make sure that everything's in order in terms of the 24 data checks that we have. And in terms of client managers and team leaders, well, it speeds up that review process, doesn't it? If you know that more errors have been caught at that early stage by the bookkeeping and account staff, then you'll have less to review. You'll have peace of mind that when you go into Xenon, you can see that all these issues have been fixed, that it's one less thing that you have to do, isn't it, essentially, at that review stage. So higher quality reporting, faster. We're all stuck for time, aren't we? So at the end of the day, anything that speeds up that review process can only help. It assists with team training and appraisals. So it can be used as a tool for really, because we've got metrics that you can run off on a team member by team member basis, then it can be used as a talking point in those appraisals or to identify which of your team maybe need a bit of training in certain areas of bookkeeping and accounts. It gives you quick and meaningful data for your client proposals. So when you're meeting new clients, if you've got access to their ledger and you plug it into Xenon at that early stage, then it's a great way of getting meaningful data to have that conversation regarding pricing at that early stage there, because it gives you the transaction counts, which we'll come on to when we look at the demo. So you can see the scope of the engagement, but also you can see the quality of the bookkeeping at a glance with this health score really quickly with the report you can then take into that first meeting or second meeting with a potential client with that PDF there as well. And then repricing becomes more simple. So one of the features that we've integrated was I wanted for my own practice initially, because sometimes I didn't do repricing of my clients in a timely manner. So when the scope of the engagement increased, so the number of transactions the client grew and so on, they were left on their fixed package. And maybe I should have popped them up into a different package sooner. But the process of repricing was always long-winded for myself in practice. So that's why we created the visualization screen for activity. So you can see with comparatives when transaction counts or turnover levels are going up or down for every client on one screen. So you can see really quickly which clients you need to consider repricing this month or this quarter or this year. But we'll come on to that shortly. And then from the point of view of firm owner or directors, obviously we've been mentioning that Xenon Connect can help you to cut down the amount of time it takes to get to that accurate trial balance. So inevitably that will increase revenue and profits if used properly. It will reduce the reputational risk, because it means if your errors are getting picked up, that reporting quality it's going out the door in terms of compliance, the VAT returns and year-end accounts, it's going to be better quality. And it'll reduce the regulatory risk as well of compliance review. So if your VAT returns are getting submitted, and obviously we all know that under MTD, all transactions get submitted to HMRC now. If that data quality is higher because more errors are getting caught before they hit those VAT returns, then obviously there's a reduced chance of VAT reviews there as well. So what I'd like to do now is take you through the actual software itself. So what you can see in front of you is an example partner account. We've got a number of organizations. So these would be your clients that you'd add to Xenon. You can see that some are connected to FreeAgent, some are Xero, some are Quickbooks. We'll use Xero example shortly when we go into it, but broadly, all the connections are the same, and we connect to all the features that we can do based on the API information available from each ledger. But we'll use Xero as an example. Now on this page, you can see you can give access to team members, as you'd expect. And also you can give access to certain features within Xenon to team members as well. So if you want to maybe not let them see certain areas, you can hide that as well. You can also add custom tags, which you can then filter the client listing throughout the advisor dashboard via those custom tags. So maybe it's clients that you do daily bookkeeping for versus weekly versus monthly versus quarterly versus annually, or maybe it's different pods that you have, different teams within your firm. You can then obviously create custom tags and apply them to certain clients as applicable to be able to enable you to then filter. Now the client panorama here is this bird's eye view of the data quality for all of your clients in one place. So you can see the client names down the left-hand side here. You can see the bookkeeping health keeping score, which won't mean too much at this stage, but we'll come on to that for the particular period that we've got in the drop down here. And you can change that instantly and it'll update the scores straight away there, as you can see. It shows you the number of issues and the financial value of those issues within that period that we're looking at now. It gives you an idea of how up to date the bookkeeping is as well. So when's the most recent transaction on Xero in this case? When was the last bank item reconciled? When's the what date is the oldest unprocessed bank item? So how up to date is that bank reconciliation? And how many unreconciled bank items are there for that particular organization in total? And has the lock date been set and up to which date? And it'll show again here. So you can export this as CSV and use it for whatever you want. You can filter by team member that's got access to the certain clients. You can filter by those custom tags that we mentioned earlier as well. It's really easy to add organizations. It's as little as 4 clicks, depending on whether it's Xero, Quickbooks, or FreeAgent that you're connecting to. And instantly it will start to pull in all the bookkeeping data from day one of the organization, and it runs it through the health checks automatically. And you'll get to that first data check report that I'll show you shortly within around about half an hour with the first sync. Each incremental sync happens every night after that, or you can do manual syncs. They take as little as 5 minutes to do a full incremental sync of the system as well. But it does happen automatically every night as well. You've got notifications. You've got things like, okay, well, has a team member, have you been tagged by another team member to do with a certain issue or transaction? They can flag things up for other team members, they can write notes and give them links straight back to those issues. You can get notified when the client is approaching the VAT return. So if they hit 90% of that rolling 12-month turnover threshold, it will flag it up for everybody that's got access to that client. And then if they go past the turnover threshold on that rolling 12 months, it will then give you another notification as well. There's various notifications, but we make sure that we don't inundate you with notifications. We're very wary of that. Now, the activity tab here, before we jump into one specific client, this is that screen whereby you can see data counts. So in terms of activity counts, so in this case, we're looking at, let's see, rolling 12 months. So the most recent 12 complete months. We've got the turnover figure here for all the clients with the monthly average there in brackets. Then we've got the same but for transaction count. So we've got total transactions here, total for the period, so it was rolling 12 months with the monthly average there in brackets as well. And then you've got a split of those total transactions by transaction type. So you can clearly see what's going on there. And it can be great for that initial pricing of clients because you've got a snapshot here for whatever period you want to look at of what's going on in terms of the activity. And so you can gauge the scope of the engagement there. Again, you can filter by those custom tags and so on the screen. You can export it to CSV. Now, when you are repricing clients, this visualization screen is the one I mentioned earlier, whereby you can look at a certain metric. In this case, we're looking at the total transaction count. But as you can see, you could select whatever you wanted here in terms of transaction counts or turnover as well. But if we leave it as total transaction count here for all of your clients, now the most recent quarter in this case, we've got it set to quarterly for each column, but you can change that, is December 24, because that's the quarter we're in now. It will give you the transaction count for each client for that particular quarter here with the monthly average in brackets again there. But it also gives you comparatives for previous quarters. So you can see easily when the scope of the engagement is increasing, maybe the number of transactions is going up. So for example, if we have a look at demo company here, you can see that last quarter, it changed color here. Now these colors, you can set bandings within settings here. And you can specify, for example, okay, between 0 and 100 transactions per month, give it this color and this package name, if that makes sense. There you can see that when you hover over, it gives it a package name at the top there. So it makes it really easy to instantly see them because this is the actual ledger data that's going through this screen here for each of your clients. It will show you what package they should be on based on the actual activity going through, and it gives you the package name above there. Now, what you can also do is specify what current package they are currently on. And if you choose to do that, then it's really easy to see, okay, well, this color here is darker than this color. Therefore, it looks like they should be on a higher package than they actually are now. So they're on package 1, but we can see here that in most recent months, they've been package 2. And even if you go further back, you can see they should have been in package 5 and package 6 and so on. Now, if we have set these current packages here and we toggle this on at the top, this will only now show you the clients that have gone over their existing package in the most recent X number of periods. By default, it goes back 3 periods to have a look to let you know which ones you need to consider repricing at this stage because it looks like they've dipped into a higher package that they should have gone into. This is a bit of a side feature, but it just makes sense to have because I know from the past experience that it cuts down the amount of time so much in working out which clients need repricing and then gives you the information that you need depending on what metrics you use for that pricing decision to actually make that repricing and send out that package adjustment to the client as well. Maybe you're pushing data into a different proposal software. You've got it here, haven't you, available to hand. But what we'll do is we'll jump into one specific client. I mentioned we're going to jump into a Xero one here, Dragon Retail Limited. When you click in, this is the page that you would get to after that first half an hour after the first sync. You'd be have as a result this bookkeeping health check overview screen. You'd have the date option here to choose. So, for example, you could select, again, rolling 12 months if you wanted to, or rolling 24 months, or a specific year end based on the settings in Xero there for that client when the year end is. But what we'll do is we'll leave it as previous month and earlier. So it goes back to day 1 with the previous month, just for the purposes of this demo here. Now you've got this health score, which doesn't mean too much at this stage, but we'll come on to that. Then you've got this summary over here. So it tells you what period you're checking based on the dropdown, the number of items it's checked. So that will be transactions, all transactions. It will be unprocessed bank line items. It will be number of contacts and account codes and so on. The number of checks we have currently are 24, and these are shown down here on the screen, and we'll go into these shortly. It tells you how many potential issues it's found. Now, obviously, we've generated it, so it creates a lot of issues in this demo account for demo purposes, and the financial value of those potential issues as well. And then it replicates that health score over here, which is also shown in the sidebar. Now, at this early stage, this is something, when you first plug it into the client, you could download here. If you click on this download icon in the top right here, it produces this PDF. This would be your firm's logo that you can add to Xenon here that it would show. So it'd be branded to your own firm. And this is a great report to take into those initial client meetings in the first instance, whereby you're trying to get to a price for the client, or maybe trying to communicate why the price you're offering to them is what it is based on the data quality as one of the metrics that you're using here. Gives a very high level check of these 24 issues, tells you how important they are, how many issues there are, and in lay terms, what the check means. Why are we checking this particular item? Why does it matter that there's unreconciled bank items on the ledger there in terms of the data quality, in terms of the completeness of that data on the ledgers? So it's a useful tool to have. And if you've gone into that first client meeting whereby you've got this PDF report, you've also got those transaction counts in your armory there that we saw a few moments ago as well. It's quite a powerful conversation, isn't it? And then if you've also jumped down to one specific check here, or a number of checks actually, but for VAT, you've gone into that first meeting with the client, you've jumped down to, let's have a think, either purchase tax missing or maybe multi-tax suppliers. If we jump into multi-tax suppliers here, and you quickly glance down the page here, and you can see that for this supplier in this Xero account, for this potential new client we've got, normally we claim back the VAT for all transactions for that specific supplier, or the client normally claims them back, or the previous advisor normally claims them back on their behalf. And you can spot that a different tax code's been used here, whereby it looks like they've missed claiming back that input VAT. That's an easy win, isn't it, at that initial stage when you're trying to get that client's business? Because you can say, okay, this is why we're charging what we're charging, because we've got this transaction count that we saw earlier. We've got the data health quality reports. We're explaining exactly why we're charging what we're charging. We're being transparent about that. But as a bit of a sweetener, we've also found this specific transaction here, even if it's just one item that you're flagging up for the potential client, whereby the previous advisor or the client themselves has misclaiming back input VAT. That's quite a powerful little tool to have, isn't it, there, to win that business from the client. But what we'll do is we'll jump through some of these checks now, just to give you a bit of a gauge of what Xenon Connect provides for you in terms of that ongoing review of the data quality. So the unreconciled bank, which we touched on a moment ago, shows you the bank accounts that are sitting in this Xero account in this example. So each of these are 3 different bank accounts. It tells you how many items are unexplained in Xero. So they're on that reconcile screen. And it also tells you how many items are on the accounts transactions tab that have been explained, but for whatever reason, they're not reconciled. They've got that orange or red text on the right-hand side saying unreconciled there. So if I click process here, in a new tab, it will open up Xero, assuming that you're logged in using the overall credentials that you use for your partner account for that organization. And you can see there's 17 items that need reconciling here. So that corresponds to these 17 items here. And then on the accounts transactions tab here, these are those orange items there that are unreconciled. Obviously have more going down as well. So you might say, okay, well, my team members know that they go straight into Xero and they would go straight to the bank screen and they would process those items. And it's a fair point. But the reason we included it in Xenon Connect is because it systemizes the process. It prompts the team member to make sure they are reconciling all transactions. And it also allows you as reviewer to ensure that it's being measured whether it has been done, because it rolls into this health score as well. So you'll see throughout the system, there's deep links, like I just showed you there, straight to Xero, and they always open up in a new tab. It's the same for Quickbooks and FreeAgent too. It will open up in a new tab and allow you to process that specific area within Xero directly. So it cuts down the amount of time it takes for you to get into Xero and get to the screen you need to rectify some of these issues as well. And we also, as we mentioned at the very start, have the ability for you to process changes from Xenon on various pages as well. If I jump down to one of these other ones now, so if you have a look at duplicate bills on the supplier side, you can see we've got the customer side duplicate check as well. So duplicate bills on the supplier side looks at every single supplier bill and it compares them for each contact. So we've got SO Garage here. We've got the same date for these 2 bills that have been found. Different narrative on that first line item on the bill there. Total value is the same. Neither have been paid yet to our supplier. You've got these deep links here that, again, open up in a new tab for you to review that specific instance of the bill further if you wanted to. But here's an example of where you can push back changes to Xero in this case. If you could see instantly that one of these should never have been added to Xero, you can void it in Xero with one click here. That will do it straight away. Now, if you're not happy with that ability to delete and void items in Xero from here, you can turn it off globally if you want to, but you can always go with that deep link into there. You can also add notes as well. So if you've got a query with one of these that you want to discuss with another team member, maybe for them to investigate, or maybe it's a review point that you've got as client manager, then you can add notes against specific issues. You can tag team members in there as well, and they will get that notification that we showed at the start, whereby it tells them they've been tagged in something for them to look into there as well. They can then have a deep link straight to that item in Xero from that note, that notification, or they can go straight to the data check page as well. Now, the idea of Xenon is to either fix the issue or dismiss it as a false positive on the right-hand side here. Now, if we dismiss one of these items here, all it does is dismiss it in Xenon. It means that those two transactions will never be deemed to be a duplicate again once we dismiss it. If we've clicked dismiss in error, we can just toggle the show dismissed items on here, and you can see it tells you who dismissed the items on what date as well. So there's the audit trail there as well. If it's been dismissed in error, they can always add it back to it as an issue to the list again. And that will then remove that as a dismissed items, and it shows it again at the top here. So that's the idea throughout the system, is fix an issue or dismiss it as a false positive. That will reduce the total issue count here, which will in turn increase the health score. When the total issue count for that specific period that we're reviewing currently is gone down to 0, this will be 100%. And that goes back to that tangible metric that we mentioned at the start on the slides, whereby I was saying that your team members know that, okay, when they log into Xenon, maybe they've just completed a VAT return, but they haven't sent it out for approval yet. Then plug it into Xenon, and it'll be there automatically. It'll be synced up to the previous evening. You can do a manual sync if you want to bring it completely up to date as well. Go through all the issues, which are shown in brackets here, which make up that 3,342 in this case, obviously a lot in this demo case. And once they've gone through and reviewed those, either fixed items or dismissed them, then this will be 0 here, and that will be 100%. Maybe it's something you want to get them to then download that PDF report of the overall data check that we looked at earlier here and upload it to your practice management solution to show that at that point in time, the VAT return had no issues for that date period when you were running it through Xenon Connect, just to prove that they've done the work, they've considered all these issues, peace of mind for you as managers, but also it systemizes that process and makes sure that they're doing this and integrating what they do on a day-to-day basis with Xenon as well to make sure that data quality is high. I'll jump down to some of these other checks now to give you more of a feel of what Xenon does. So we've got essentially an aged debtors review here. It cuts down the amount of time you're manually reviewing the aged debtors report in Xero because it pulls out any customer invoice which is still unpaid after X number of days old. You can change that threshold, and throughout the system, you can always change the settings to make them more or less sensitive, but it does come with settings as default. There's nothing you need to do. When I said 4 clicks at the start to set up and connect the client, that is the truth. So it'd be 4 or 5 clicks depending on the client type. It would start sucking in data automatically, and you would get to that first day check report straight away based on the default settings. Now you can download each of these screens as well. So if you wanted to, for example, do a bad debt review for the client, you could download a CSV, you'd send it to the client in an email, get them to put their notes on the CSV and send it back to you, and then you could obviously process it as applicable. You can start to raise a credit note for a sales invoice here. So if you use that as an example, you can see here it creates a new credit note, pre-populated with the contact's name there, for you to then fill out, maybe write off as a bad debt or something, or whatever it may be. You could fix it natively within Xero by going straight to the invoice there and maybe allocating a payment against it or whatever it may be. So if I jump down to some of the other ones, okay, so we've got credit note reviews, sales and purchase side. Why are there credit notes on a system older than 60 days old that has still got some credit remaining? So it's not all been allocated yet. So it's either part allocated or completely unallocated. Prompts those team members to go in and make sure we're cleaning this up. And sometimes this can get left to the year end, that big tidy up, can't it? Or even omitted from that year end tidy up. So this prompts team members to make sure they're keeping on top of it at the end of the year. And a lot of these data checks, they're in place here to make sure that we're cutting the amount of work down at the year end because we're front loading when we're getting this data quality corrected throughout the bookkeeping throughout the year as well. So that year end process should be a lot more streamlined at the end of the year, because a lot of these issues that you would traditionally do at the year end are being fixed throughout the year as well. And I'll come on to some of those more traditional year-end checks that we've got here as well. We've got the same sort of things on the supplier side, so old unpaid supplier bills, old purchase credits. Now the next one, opening balance difference, is a fairly new one, and it's one I got really excited about introducing. It was for limited companies, and what happens is if you've put the company reference, the company's house reference in Xero or in FreeAgent, for example, then Xenon picks up that reference. It automatically detects when you submit a set of accounts to Company's House by plugging into the Company's House API through that publicly available information. It downloads the abbreviated or other statutory accounts from Company's House for that specific organization, your client that you're currently in. And it goes through the XBRL file of that set of accounts that you just submitted, looking for the net assets or liabilities figure from the balance sheet. And if it finds it, which it does 99% of the time, it will pull that figure into Xenon. It'll tell you what year end's been submitted here, and it will compare that net assets and liabilities figure from the balance sheet with what is showing on the same date within the ledger. In this case, it's Xero. If there's a difference, it will flag it up here. And if there is a difference, obviously, maybe it means that we haven't put those opening balance adjustments on. Maybe the journal's missing. Maybe the separate transactions haven't been processed on the ledger itself. They've just been put through, for example, on the year-end statutory account software. Or maybe the client's been logging in and they've been processing transactions in a prior year that's already been submitted to Company's House, and we don't want that. Maybe we've got to set the lot date or something. Either way, you can click on Show Late Transactions. This will then show you the most recently submitted transactions based on the posted date that have gone to that specific accounting year or prior, which may have affected that net assets or liabilities figure there. So it's peace of mind that, first of all, that the opening balances match when we're reviewing the next set of accounts, for example, and also that they don't go out of kilter throughout the year because maybe the client's posting some transactions late or something like that. So it's a handy one to have there. Now we've got unapproved invoices, unapproved bills. So on the supplier side, it's that draft bills area in Xero in this case. Why are there loads of draft bills sitting there? Let's make sure we're cleaning them out on a timely basis. Make sure your team members are either approving them, which you can do with one click from here if you can see instantly that all the data's there, or deleting them from Xero, the draft bills area. So if you can see it's maybe extra documentation that's been added to Xero in error, you can actually delete it straight from here in Xero. Again, you can remove these buttons and hide them if you want to in settings. Or you can just investigate further, go straight to this particular draft bill and do what you need to do here. Invoice direct and bill direct. If we have a look at the supplier side, this is one of the biggest time savers for many of your clients that you will have as a practice, in my opinion. And that's the feedback we've had from many of our users as well. What this check here does, it looks for any unpaid bill or draft bill, so looking at the supplier side, that's sitting there in Xero, that when the bank payment's gone through the bank, when someone's reconciled that payment, instead of putting it against the bill, what they've done is they've put it straight to an expense code as a spend item. This will flag up that situation. You can see here, if you have a look at this one, second one down, Microsoft, there's an unpaid bill dated 11th of August. When someone's posted the bank item, instead of putting it against the bill, what they've done in Xero is they put it straight as a spend item to an expense code instead. So they duplicated the expense, profit's understated at the moment, and there's a risk that Microsoft's going to be paid twice by our client because it's still showing as unpaid here. So it's a case of then going into the payment with a deep link into Xero, remove and redo, and put it against the bill. So it's all those mismatches whereby maybe it's the client clicking OK on that bank reconciliation as a spend item, or maybe it's team members that maybe need a bit of training because they're putting items as spend items when they should be putting them against the bill. Or maybe it's just that you haven't received the documentation, the supply bill from the client yet when you've processed the bank item, and you just want to get it off that reconciliation screen, depending how you do things within your own practice. Then when they do eventually upload the bill in that case, it will flag up as a duplicate here. Now, these next three are those traditional year-end checks, or three of the year-end checks that we tend to do. Why not do them throughout the year and front load that work so we're not doing lots of work at the year end? Low cost assets check looks for low value fixed asset additions. Why are we capitalizing a tabletop lamp here for an office desk for £71? Currently it's in computer equipment additions. Why not move it to the P&L? And if you want to change it in Xero to the P&L, maybe write it off to repairs or whatever, select that code there, the P&L code, and the drop down based on the chart of accounts for that client. Click Save Changes, and that will push that change instantly back to that bill in Xero straight from here. It will then remove it automatically from the list here. It will reduce the issue count, and it will slightly increase the health score there as well. If it's a false positive, you're happy to keep capitalizing a £50 invoice to Staples from Staples, then just click dismiss and it will get it off the list from here. It won't show up again for that specific item. If there's lots of items that are low value for a specific supplier, you can ignore this contact, and that will mean that any transactions from that particular contact won't show up again here on this specific data check. And you'll see throughout the system, there's plenty of ways to ignore contacts, so you're not having false positives showing up all the time if there's a particular reason why a supplier falls outside of the normal rules of that data check. On the flip side of this one is the capital item review. So this one's looking for large value items in what I call those P&L dumping grounds. So repairs and maintenance, office stationery, and so on. It pulls in those default ones automatically to be monitored, but you can choose custom codes to monitor as well and set different thresholds of what is deemed to be a large value item. So on that last check, the low cost items, assets, and also capital item review here, you can set the threshold to whatever you want it as well, depending on materiality levels in your particular practice, for example. So if you wanted to capitalize this, and you could change this to whatever you wanted to, in additions code, click Save Changes, that'll update that spend item in this case from repairs and maintenance to plant and machinery. And the last one, those year-end sort of tidy up checks, traditional checks, is this one. It's a general expenses or sundry expenses review. Now, for default, for Xero, it will monitor the 429 general expenses code. It will look for items over a certain value and ask you the question, or your team members the question, can't we be more specific with the account code we're using for this particular item? Because at the moment we're using this really broad code, general expenses here. Let's be more specific, let's change it, click Save Changes, and it'll update on the ledger straight away. You can choose other codes if you want to monitor other codes as well. So you could, for example, monitor the suspense account, other creditors, other sales, even if you wanted to, that sort of thing. And it will keep flagging them up over a certain threshold for that particular account code that you set in settings at the top here. Then we've got consistency checks, multi-account suppliers. This one looks at every single contact and every transaction that's happened historically, and it looks for consistency of account code that we're using. So Bob the Builder here is a contact, the supplier in Xero. Normally we're putting the purchase of bricks to direct expenses, account code direct expenses, but the system's detected that this particular client has had an inconsistent tax code being used here for this contact. Someone's put a bill for the purchase of bricks, similar sort of amount, to cost of goods sold. It's flagged up that lack of consistency with the account code being used. So it looks like we need to change that to direct expenses. Not a major difference in here in terms of account code. It'll still show up in the P&L and in cost of goods sold, won't it, both of these codes. But as you can imagine, it could be a wildly different account code. So it would be a case of going to Xero and changing that account code there. If it's a false positive, maybe it's something like Amazon, whereby you'll have lots of different account codes being used and they'll be inconsistent all the time. Then again, it's another example of when you should ignore this contact to make sure you're not having to click mark as OK all the time, even if you're doing that in bulk. I should mention that you can do things in bulk at the top here as well. So on this page, you can bulk dismiss, I mark them as OK here. You can bulk them all to say they're all OK. You've reviewed them all. Now, the next one is similar, but for VAT codes. And we touched on this at the start, whereby it looks for consistency in the use of VAT codes for particular contacts. We used the example of Bill's Computers, whereby normally we're claiming back the VAT on expenses, but you can see here that the transaction has gone through. It's a supplier bill here with the outside the scope VAT code there. Looks like it's wrong. Let's fix that to the client. It's that extra set of eyes, because when we're doing that review of the detailed VAT report in Xero or any of the ledger, those reports natively within the ledger are organized for VAT based on traditionally the tax code and then a data transaction. There's nothing in there to look for consistency of VAT code being used on a supplier by supplier basis. And you would expect generally the tax code to be the same for all transactions for a specific supplier, wouldn't you? Obviously, there may be exemptions to that. Things like if there's standard rated and exempt, if it's sort of financial services or maybe insurance or something, then maybe you want to ignore that contact or just leave it in there and just mark them as okay when you see them. I'll jump down to sales tax missing. This is another VAT one here. This will tell you when there's a transaction that's gone to a sales code or other income code, which has been put through with the outside the scope tax code. It's detected that this specific client, Dragon Retail Limited here, is registered for VAT, and it's saying that it looks like we should have used a different code here. Now, maybe it's 20% VAT for this item, and maybe for this interest received, it should have been exempt code, not no VAT. Either way, it's asking the question, because 99.9% of the time you'd expect this tax code for all these items to be something other than outside the scope, unless it's maybe something like grant income received, which maybe sometimes is legitimately outside the scope. On the flip side of this one, and maybe more beneficial to get your clients excited, would be the purchase tax missing. So it's another example of something you could use at that early stage when you're first trying to take on a client as well. This one spots the flip side of the last check. It looks, first of all, it checks that the client's VAT registered based on the settings in Xero in this case. And it looks for any transaction that's gone through the outside the scope of that code. Obviously, it disregards account codes like direct remuneration, wages, sundry, not sundry, maybe things like suspense account, depreciation, and so on. And it looks at all the other account codes, either expense codes, whereby you'd expect to have some sort of VAT code there. Also looks at additions codes on the balance sheet and prepayments as well, and flags them up for you. So it's an easy win, isn't it? If we can spot whereby we've missed claiming back input VAT for the clients, or maybe the previous advisors missed that. And the last two checks, I'll just show you duplicate contacts here. This is one of these, what I call utility checks. Doesn't affect the ledgers directly, but what it does affect is the actual contact listing. So suppliers and customers within Xero there in this case. It looks at every contact name within Xero here. It disregards the word limited or LTD, and it compares the remaining text string. So staples versus staples, it's exactly the same. So these two contacts look like they've been duplicated. 100% similarity because it's exactly the same in terms of the characters used here. And it gives you an idea of, okay, well, which is the active record? So we've got Amazon Marketplace, Amazon Marketplaces here. Looks like you can probably tell from the name that you probably want to get rid of the second one, the plural one. But as a bit of help here, to save you having to go into Xero to work out which one you need to get rid of, it tells you that Amazon Marketplace, this instance of the contact here, has got at least one sales invoice raised against it, and it's also got at least one supplier bill raised against it. It looks like that's the active record we want to keep, in which case we would go straight to the other record, opens up in Xero in a new tab, and then you would go to, let's see where it is with the new system, merge, and then you would start typing in the other Amazon version there. You'd merge it into the one you want to keep, click merge, and that'll get rid of it. Then the next time you sync, or you do a micro sync just to the page that you're currently working on, so it's a lot quicker, it can be as little as 10 seconds, it will then remove that item from the listing here because it'll detect that you've only got one instance of the contact now. And this is a great what I call a rainy day check, because if maybe you've got a team member that's got a bit of downtime, if that is ever the case in your practice, then why not get them to go through all these sorts of items within all of your clients? Because if you're reducing the amount of duplicate contacts there that are sitting there in the ledger, then it's going to speed up the bookkeeping process in terms of the bookkeeping itself, or the review process of the ledgers, and when you're matching payments to invoices and so on. If you've only got one instance, it'll be apparent, won't it, which one you want to use. So it's a rainy day check, but it certainly does help up with speeding up the bookkeeping if we are keeping this in check as well. And in a nutshell, that is what Xenon Connect does. We have got other features. I'll briefly mention the Xenon Insight, which is 9 boxes for limited companies, 6 boxes for self-employed or partnerships. So we've got a sales tracker, which is actual sales on a monthly basis versus the target sales, either pulling in the budgets from Xero or setting an automatic or manual target within settings there. Maybe it's more one for the client. Now, you've got the option to invite the client into Xenon if you want to. You've got that choice. Most advisors don't do unless the client's heavily involved with the bookkeeping. Then you've got this cash health check, whereby it tells you, okay, how much cash is sitting there per Xero in this case, and what's the upcoming liabilities per the credit balances on the trial balance on the balance sheet there. Gives more weight to the short-term liabilities and being able to cover those with the current cash you've got, less weight to the long-term loans, for example, rolls it into a health score there. We've got a high level of profitability, sales versus gross versus net profit comparison for recent months. Handy for the client, but also to spot anomalies. If something sticks out as a big drop in profit, maybe something needs prepaying or something, can be handy for that purpose. Corporation tax estimate for the current and previous 2 financial years, with the ability to apply add backs. So depreciation and entertainment, they're added by default, but you can add other account codes as add backs. You can also apply capital allowance treatment to additions codes and so on as well. Then we've got this, why didn't you tell me about this conversation negator, whereby you've got director's loan account review, which director's loan accounts are overdrawn currently. In this case, you can see a nice green tick, so it looks like the actual director owes the company money rather than vice versa. If the company owes if the director, owes the company money, then it would show as an exclamation mark here as a warning. If the company owes the director money, then it would show up as a nice green tick here. But it prompts you to have that conversation regarding overdrawn director's loan accounts, doesn't it, at an early stage if we're monitoring this page here, because it's saying that, okay, there may be section 455 tax to pay at the end of the year, maybe beneficial loan interest and so on. And we need to consider having that conversation to let the client know they need to repay that director's loan account or maybe issue a dividend paper certificate or something. We've got a business valuation tool here, which you can choose based on profit, turnover, or net assets as a model. Doesn't come with a model added by default, but you can change that in settings if you want to maybe start a conversation about exit strategy planning, that sort of thing. Got a working capital cycle review here. Can we help the client with maybe introducing some sort of cash management process, maybe introducing Stripe or GoCardless into the business or whatever other services we can help with? And then the final one is dividend availability. If you ever get asked the question by shareholders of one of your clients, how much can I take out at a maximum, especially those owner-managed businesses, isn't it, whereby they want to strip out every penny as dividend on top of their salary? Well, this will give you that figure here because it will show you the current profit reserves per the balance sheet as it currently stands. It will reduce it by an estimate of corporation tax as well. If it's not already been journaled in, you can choose which estimates get pulled through here, and then it will show you the maximum amount they can take out as dividend. If it's a negative figure or zero, it will show an exclamation mark saying no dividend currently available. So it's maybe prevents you from telling the client they can take out dividends whenever. Maybe it stops them from, if you give access to them as well, it will stop them from taking out a dividend, whereby it will be a legal dividend if there's no reserves available to pay that dividend. This is something you can also download as a PDF with your firm's logo at the top there, showing. You can maybe give it out as a handout with the management accounts, or maybe as a VAT return as well. So in a nutshell, this is what Xenon Connect does. I know I've gone a bit over how long I was expecting to take. If there's any questions, do let me know. I'll just jump back to the slides now. In terms of pricing, starter package starts at just £20 per month. It's a very low price point, and that will give you 5 organizations and 10 team members, and you get access to everything else that you've seen. There's nothing hidden behind any sort of paywalls. The only thing that differ between all these packages are number of organizations you can add, i.e. the number of clients you can add, and the number of team members you can add, and it starts off at 10 anyway. Bronze goes up to 10 organizations, £35 per month. Silver, 25 organizations, £75 per month. Gold, 50 organizations, £125 per month. Platinum is 100 organizations for £200 per month. And anything above 100 organizations, we bill out at £2 per client. So that's the low price point there that we apply to everything above that. So we've got some firms that have got into the thousands of organizations added. We're very transparent. It's £2 per client on top of that. And you can add them on in packs of 10 over and above the 100 organizations as well. But what we have is the ability for you to add one organization to your partner account for free for life, and it'll stay there forever. There's no sort of hidden features which you can't get access to. You can fully use that organization within Xenon for life. There's a link in the chat that I put at the start there, whereby it's the 4th one down at the bottom there, the partner registration form. If you go to that form, you set up the partner account really quickly, and you can instantly add that one organization of your choice. Now, maybe you want to test it out with a large client first, in which case, plug a large client into it. If you want to delete it at some point over the coming weeks or months and replace it with your own practice organization, then just get in touch with us and we can delete it for you, so you can then add another organization. But for any other organizations, once you've got a package added, what you can do is you can delete them at any point in time, and you can then replace them with other packages as well. There's a no risk process to getting started. Add that one organization for free for life to get started with that. And if you've got any questions, please do book in a one-to-one meeting. We're going to be running some training courses 1 hour a day for 5 days in a row soon. So if you want to get involved with that, just let me know, pop me an email as well. We can have a chat about that too. thanks all so much for watching the webinar. I really appreciate you taking the time. Do let me know if I can answer any questions at all. And yeah, hopefully you're finding Xenon Connect useful. Thanks a lot. Bye now.